His parents took out a $523,000 mortgage to pay for his sister's reckless loan, then told him, "It's your duty to cover it." He just smiled, but what he did next turned his entire family upside down. This is a story of quiet rebellion, hard choices, and the power of walking away to find true peace. Don't miss it. Please, before we start this story, support us by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. Growing up in the warm suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, Mark Carson had always played the role of the responsible child. He got good grades, worked part-time in high school, and earned a full scholarship to study engineering at Arizona State. His younger sister Allison, on the other hand, was a dreamer, loved by everyone, indulged by their parents, and seemingly untouched by the word consequences. Their parents, Gerald and Denise Carson, were typical middle-class Americans. Gerald worked as a high school principal. Denise ran a small interior design business from home. They weren't rich, but they always found ways to give Allison whatever she wanted: piano lessons, painting classes, private tutors. When she decided she wanted to study design in New York, they co-signed massive student loans without blinking. Mark never questioned it. He knew the game. Allison was the star, the creative soul, while he was the one who always had it together. He didn't need help, so he never expected it. One sunny Sunday afternoon, Gerald and Denise invited Mark over for lunch. As he sat at the table eating grilled chicken and potatoes, the conversation took a sharp turn. "We've got some exciting news," Denise beamed. "We finally got Allison cleared of all that student debt." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Really? That's good, I guess. How?" "We refinanced the house," Gerald said proudly. "Took out a new mortgage. $523,000. It covers her loans and the rest will help her get set up in San Francisco. She's starting a new design job next month." Mark put down his fork. "Wait, you mortgaged the house? You're both almost 60. "It was necessary," Denise said. "She needed a fresh start. The system is rigged against artists. You wouldn't understand." "I do understand debt," Mark replied quietly. "And retirement. What happens when that payment kicks in?" There was a pause, then Gerald cleared his throat. "Well, we figured you could help, just until she gets on her feet. You make good money, son. It's your duty. We're a family." Mark blinked. He had always helped when needed, paid for car repairs, bought groceries when they were tight. But this? Over $500,000? "You're serious?" he asked. "You expect me to help pay off a mortgage you took for Allison's choices?" "It's not about fairness, Mark," Denise said with a sigh. "It's about love. We all need to make sacrifices." Mark stared at them, not angry yet, but something deeper. A strange calm washed over him. "I hear you," he said with a soft smile. "Thanks for letting me know." He finished his lunch quietly, his mind already moving. His parents thought they could hand him someone else's debt like it was a family heirloom. But this time, Mark wasn't going to play along. 2 days after the lunch bombshell, Mark got another call. This time it was from Allison herself. "Hey, big bro," she chirped. "Mom and Dad told me you were kind of surprised about the mortgage. Don't worry, it's all going to work out." Mark was quiet for a moment. "You mean the $500,000 mortgage they expect me to help pay?" She chuckled like it was a joke. "It's not like that. It's just temporary. I'm about to blow up with this new gig. My boss said I've got real potential. Just give me like 6 months and everything will be cool." Mark could almost hear the champagne fizzing on the other end of the line. "Allison, do you know what interest on that kind of mortgage looks like? Have you even seen the payment plan?" "Why are you always so negative?" she said sharply. "You make good money. What's the big deal? You've always been the boring one, playing it safe. Mom and Dad know you can handle it. You should be happy they believe in you." He took a breath. "I didn't co-sign anything. I'm not responsible for this." "Wow, that's cold," she muttered. "I thought you were better than that." The call ended with a sarcastic, "Thanks for nothing," and Mark was left staring at his phone in disbelief. Later that week, the family gathered at the Carsons' house for a casual dinner. It was supposed to be lighthearted, celebrating Allison's move to San Francisco and her new chapter. But the tension was thick. Allison showed up late, as usual, wearing sunglasses indoors and flashing her Instagram perfect smile. "Sorry, traffic was murder," she said, tossing her designer purse on the table. Denise poured wine while Gerald grilled burgers in the backyard. "Isn't she amazing?" Denise beamed. "She's going to make such a difference in the world." Mark sat next to Clara, his fiancée, quietly observing. Clara had warned him not to engage, but when Gerald brought up the mortgage again, suggesting, "It would really help to have your support, son," Mark decided he was done holding back. "Help how?" he asked. "You mean paying thousands each month for a loan I had no part in? For a sister who's never once taken accountability?" The room froze. Clara glanced nervously between him and his parents. "You always do this," Allison said, glaring. "Try to act like you're so morally superior, just because you crunch numbers and play life by the rules. And you always assume someone will clean up after your mess," Mark replied calmly. "Guess what, Allison? This time it won't be me." Gerald stood up, voice rising. "We're a family, Mark. You don't turn your back on family." Mark met his father's eyes. "Family works both ways, Dad, and you turned your back on fairness a long time ago." He stood and reached for Clara's hand. "We're leaving." The ride home was quiet at first. Mark drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on Clara's knee. She didn't speak until they turned into the parking lot of their apartment complex. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded, eyes fixed forward. "Yeah. Actually, I think I am." Mark had spent most of his life trying to be the dutiful son, the supportive brother, the rock everyone could lean on. But something shifted during that dinner. He realized that being the reliable one had turned him into a crutch for everyone else's recklessness. Inside the apartment, Clara sat on the couch as Mark paced the living room. "I just don't get it," he said, frustration building. "Why would my parents put their retirement, their house, their everything on the line for her again?" "Because they've always seen her as someone to rescue," Clara replied. "And you? You've always been the one they expect to be okay, even if you're drowning." Mark stopped pacing and stared out the window. "It's like they don't even realize how unfair it is." The next morning, Mark made a decision. He called his parents. "Mom, Dad, I've thought about it. I won't be contributing a single cent toward that mortgage. I didn't agree to it, and I won't let you guilt me into it." Denise sounded stunned. "Mark, we raised you better than this." "No," he said firmly. "You raised me to clean up after people who don't take responsibility. That ends now." Before she could reply, he added, "If you need help budgeting, I'll sit down with you. If things get hard, I'll support you emotionally. But financially, this was your choice. You and Allison will have to deal with the consequences." He hung up. That evening, Clara brought out 2 glasses of wine and joined him on the couch. "Proud of you," she said. "It feels weird," he admitted, "like I'm betraying them. But at the same time, I finally feel like I'm standing up for myself." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You didn't betray anyone. You're just refusing to be part of a system that was never fair to begin with." Over the next few days, the silence from his parents was deafening. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive meme from Allison. But Mark stayed firm. He poured his focus into work, started looking into properties to buy with Clara, and even reconnected with some old college friends. For the first time in years, his life was his own. Then one night, a knock came at the door. He opened it, and there stood Allison, red-eyed and disheveled, a suitcase at her feet. "Can I stay here?" she asked, voice cracking. "Mom and Dad, they're losing the house." Mark stared at her, unmoving. This he hadn't expected. Mark stood at the doorway, the weight of Allison's presence pressing down like a thundercloud. She looked nothing like her usual Instagram-ready self. Her makeup was smudged, her clothes wrinkled, and the light in her eyes had dimmed. Clara appeared behind him, her hand instinctively resting on his arm. "Is everything okay?" Allison looked down, wiping her cheek. "Mom and Dad got a notice. They're behind on payments. I had no idea it was that bad. I thought the job in San Francisco would fix everything, but I lost it." Mark's jaw tightened. "You just started that job 3 months ago." "I got let go," she whispered. "They said I wasn't a good fit. Then I couldn't afford rent, and when I called Mom, she said they were tapped out. And now you're here, he said, not unkindly, but with a steady, deliberate tone. Looking for what, another bailout? Allison winced. I'm not asking for money. I just need a place to crash for a few nights, just until I figure something out. Mark hesitated. His instincts battled each other. One side, shaped by years of obligation and guilt, told him to let her in, to fix things. The other side, the one that had just started growing after years of suppression, reminded him of boundaries, of fairness, of peace. He stepped aside. You can stay for 3 nights, that's it. Allison nodded quickly, dragging her suitcase inside. Thank you. I really mean it. Over the next 2 days, she stayed mostly quiet. She slept in the guest room, browsed job listings on her laptop, and avoided eye contact with Clara. But on the 3rd night, Mark found her in the kitchen, sipping tea in the dark. I never thanked you, she said, eyes lowered. And I never apologized for the way I talked to you, or the way I let Mom and Dad throw this mess in your lap. Mark leaned on the counter across from her. You've had chances to take responsibility before. I know, she said. I always figured someone would save me, and I guess I liked it that way. He said nothing, letting the silence do the talking. I'm applying for jobs in Phoenix, she continued. Entry-level design assistant stuff. No glamour, but I need to start over. That's the first grown-up thing I've heard you say in a long time, Mark replied. She gave a half smile. I'm sorry, really. Mark studied her face. For once, she looked like someone who'd felt the burn of her own choices. I hope you mean that, he said, because this time, you're on your own. No more rescues. She nodded. That night, Allison packed her bags without being told. She hugged Clara, then Mark, and when the door closed behind her, Mark felt a strange sense of peace. This wasn't about revenge or being cold. It was about breaking a cycle. 3 weeks passed without a word from Allison or his parents. At first, Mark expected the silence to end in a dramatic phone call, a guilt-laced message from his mother, or even another unannounced visit. But none came. It was eerie, like being ghosted by your own family. You think they're just giving you the silent treatment? Clara asked one evening as they cooked dinner together. Probably, Mark replied, but honestly, it's kind of peaceful. Still, there was a dull ache in his chest. Years of emotional labor don't just vanish overnight. The silence wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Then one Friday afternoon, Mark got a text from his dad. Come by the house when you can. We need to talk. Clara raised an eyebrow when he told her. Do you want me to come with you? He shook his head. I need to face them alone. When he pulled up to his parents' house, the sight of the old place struck him. The porch needed paint. The lawn was half dead. His childhood home was starting to show the cracks, inside and out. Denise opened the door before he could even knock. Mark, she said, sounding tired. Hey, Mom. They sat at the kitchen table where he'd eaten 1,000 childhood dinners. Gerald was already seated, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept much. So? Mark asked. What's going on? We're selling the house, Gerald said bluntly. Denise added quickly. It's not just about the mortgage. We're downsizing anyway. You're selling it because you can't keep up with the payments, Mark said. Let's be real. Silence. Finally, Gerald spoke. You were right. We overreached, and we put you in an unfair position. I guess we thought you'd do what you always do. Mark nodded. Bail you out. We're not asking you to anymore, Denise said. We got an offer from a family moving in from Denver, enough to cover the mortgage and move into a condo near the lake. Mark studied them both. His parents weren't perfect, but maybe, just maybe, they were learning. Allison? He asked. She's got a job, Gerald said, almost surprised himself. Some firm in Phoenix hired her on as an intern. Says she's staying in a shared apartment and walking to work. She hasn't asked us for a cent. That last part seemed to impress him. Well, Mark said, standing, I hope that sticks. For all of you. Denise stood and hugged him. We love you, Mark, even when we mess up. I know, he said, but love without respect isn't love that works. As he drove away, Mark felt something new, a lightness he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. He wasn't just the reliable son anymore. He was a man with boundaries, a man who had learned how to love himself enough to say no. 2 months later, life looked very different for Mark and Clara. They had just moved into a cozy 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of Flagstaff. It wasn't flashy, but it was theirs, bought with years of careful saving, hard work, and not a single dime of inherited debt. Every wall, every faucet, every nail in the drywall belonged to them. As they unpacked boxes in their new living room, Clara looked around with a satisfied smile. "Feels like a real home, doesn't it?" Mark grinned. "Yeah. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm living under the weight of somebody else's decisions." She walked over, wrapped her arms around his waist. "I'm proud of you, you know. Not everyone has the courage to draw a line with their own family." Mark kissed her forehead. "Took me long enough." They spent the weekend settling in, new curtains, a thrift store dining table, and a backyard barbecue to celebrate with friends. For once, Mark wasn't afraid that a phone call would derail their peace. But on Sunday afternoon, his phone buzzed with a number he hadn't seen in a while. It was Allison. He let it ring, hesitated, then picked up. "Hey, stranger," she said. "Got a sec?" "Sure," Mark said, cautious. "I'm not calling for money, I promise," she added quickly, sensing his hesitation. "Actually, I just wanted to say thanks." "For what?" "For not rescuing me. For not letting Mom and Dad drag you into the mess again." "I didn't get it then, but I do now. I'm learning what it means to stand on my own." Mark sat down in a folding chair, the only one they'd unpacked so far for the living room. "That's good to hear, Allison. Really. I even opened a savings account," she said with a soft laugh. "Like a real one, with an emergency fund and everything." "Now that's something I never thought I'd hear you say." They talked for a few more minutes, light-hearted but honest. She still had a long way to go, but Mark could hear it in her voice. She was finally growing up. After he hung up, Clara came in from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" He nodded. "Yeah, that was Allison. She's, trying." Clara smiled knowingly. "You know, just because you're not carrying her doesn't mean you don't care." "I know," Mark said, "but I've learned that sometimes the best way to love people is to let them fall and rise on their own." They sat together on the floor, the golden Arizona sun pouring in through the windows. No yelling, no begging, no guilt trips. Just two people who had taken control of their own lives, writing a future on their own terms. Mark finally felt free, not because his family had changed, but because he had. 6 months had passed. Autumn was rolling into northern Arizona with a slow grace. Burnt orange leaves fell across Mark and Clara's backyard as they raked and laughed like teenagers. It had become their Saturday ritual. Yard work in the morning, homemade pizza in the evening, and quiet joy in between. Everything was finally calm. Mark had taken a promotion at work, not because he needed more money, but because he genuinely wanted to lead. Clara had started her own online business selling handmade candles and organic soaps, and it was beginning to take off. For the first time in their marriage, they weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And then something unexpected happened. Clara walked into the living room one night, holding a small white stick in her hand. Her eyes sparkled, and her voice trembled. "I'm pregnant." Mark stared at her, stunned. "You're serious?" She nodded, biting her lip. "Yes, we're having a baby." A rush of emotions hit him. Shock, awe, a touch of fear, but mostly overwhelming joy. He pulled her into his arms, the weight of every past hardship dissolving in the warmth of that moment. It was the future he had almost missed chasing after someone else's dreams and obligations. But not anymore. They began preparing the nursery in the smallest bedroom, painting the walls a soft, seafoam green. Clara joked that their child would grow up knowing how to make soap and manage a budget before kindergarten. Mark made sure the crib was perfectly level, his little act of perfectionism. A few weeks later, they received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, handwritten, from Denise. "Dear Mark and Clara, your father and I wanted to say congratulations. Allison told us the news. We're truly happy for you. We've learned a lot this past year. Selling the house was the hardest thing we've ever done, but it taught us something important. We can start over too. We're living modestly now. No more loans, no more enabling. And Allison, she's still figuring it out, but she's doing it her way, and we're letting her." Thank you for standing up for yourself. We didn't understand then, but we do now. You taught all of us something. Love, Mom and Dad. Mark read the letter twice before handing it to Clara. I didn't expect that, he admitted. She smiled. Looks like everyone's growing up. The baby was born in early spring, a girl named Lena Joy Carter, and she brought with her a new kind of peace, one not earned through sacrifice but by choosing self-respect, love and balance. Mark held her one evening as the sun set behind their home, a warm breeze drifting through the window. I promise, he whispered to her, I'll never put the weight of others on your shoulders. You'll grow up free, just like I finally did. And in that moment, Mark knew. The cycle was broken. The future was his. And life, real, grounded, joyful life, had finally begun. Mark's journey from burdened son to self-empowered man proves that true freedom begins when we set boundaries and choose ourselves without guilt. By refusing to carry the weight of family expectations, he not only found peace, but built a life of purpose, love, and generational healing. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Hope Stories for more powerful, real-life tales that inspire strength, growth, and second chances. Your support means everything.